here we are, back with another new project. Sorry, it's been a little while since I've made a video. Yeah, things have been really quite busy and hectic in life. Anyways, a friend of mine gave me a chainsaw. Short story, eh? So this was his dad's chainsaw. It's a worked out they were made between 1958 and some sources say 62, other sources say 68, so yeah, 58 to 68, somewhere in there. Homelite WIZ. It's a two-stroke, worked out I think it's about 47cc, two-stroke chainsaw, single cylinder, gear driven to the chain, so it's apparently gears down and the chain runs slow. I haven't had it running yet. As you can see by age, no chain brake, no safety features to this thing. It's got a manual pump for oil lubrication. Yeah, not much more that I know about it really. I've been out, it sparks. I've got spark from the old spark plug through it. It turns over good. The only problem I found was a crack on the fuel line on the other side here. Turn it around. Hopefully I'll be able to show you the fuel line. There was a crack in the outer casing of that line, and when I went to try and pull it off, the whole outer part of the fuel line cracked away. Got the spring on the inside, so unfortunately I can't run it at the moment. I have got some fuel line, but I'm going to see if this will fit through. I've got to try and take the carb out. I'm learning with this thing. I've got to try and figure out how to actually take it apart, get to the carb underneath the back, and replace that fuel line. But apparently it was running not that long ago, so we're just going to have a go, change that fuel line over, get it running, and then decide what we do with cleaning it up and making it look good. Chain's all nice and free. I pumped some oil through the feeder and it's lubed up, pumped right through the line and lubing the chain nicely, so that's spinning and going around the bar nicely. The air filter is quite interesting. Air is drawn in through the holes in the back of the fuel tank here, runs through the inside of the filter and then out and around and down into the carb underneath. Trying to find an original replacement filter, extremely difficult for something of this age for the chainsaw shop, but I did find something very, very similar that's hopefully going to do the job. This is from a Victor lawnmower, and it looks pretty much the same. I've tried it for size and I just need to shave down a little bit of the outer plastic to get it to slide in there, and probably drill a hole in the opposite end. So one end of the filter has a hole. This will obviously go onto the lawnmower and draw air through the filter and out and into the carb this way, while this chainsaw goes the other way. The air goes down the inside of the filter and then disperses out and around and into the carb. So yeah, got to bore a hole through there, shave just a little bit off the outer plastic, and hopefully that'll be the right size. So yeah, that's pretty much all I know about this thing for now. Yeah, big thanks to Neville. Neville's dad no longer wanted or had a use for this chainsaw, and Nev, knowing what I do with the things I do from work, he thought I'd be a great new owner for this, I guess, and we'll get it all cleaned up and running again and hopefully do him proud. I also bought a new spark plug for it, although the old spark plug that's in there, when I pulled it out and pulled it over, I did get spark from it, so that's a good sign. We'll try it with the old plug, might just change to the new one for the sake of it. But yeah, I'll get this thing up on the bench and try and get into this carb and replace this fuel line. Fueling for it's going to be quite interesting. Being really, really old, everything I can find online and even the instructions that are with it about fueling for it works out to about a 10 to 1 two-stroke ratio. But that was using just a standard old SAE 30 engine oil. So technology and oil technology's come a long way, and everything I've found in forums now is saying that I could run this at about 40 or 50 to 1 with a modern two-stroke oil. So I'll do a little bit more looking into that and see what I come up with before I decide what I'm going to put in it. But I think running like a 10 to 1 mix is just going to create way too much smoke, and I don't think it's going to be necessary. The modern oils are going to work. So yeah, we'll just play it by ear and see what happens. But for now, up on the bench it's going to go, and we'll start taking it apart and see what happens. So the first thing I wanted to show you was this air filter. It's quite a strange situation. If I undo 2 screws out of the cap on this end, I have had some of these bits and pieces off just to just to see what I was looking at earlier and to get a comparison for when I went and bought this new filter. 2 screws and that cap comes off, and the air filter is a little tube. So that's the old one, and this is what I've got for the replacement. So similar in size, diameter is good, apart from there's a little ridge on the plastic caps on the ends of this. So I think with a knife, if I shave that down, I should be able to slide that through, and the length is pretty much spot on. And when this cap goes back into here, it will sandwich the same way that this does. Got to give it a try, see what happens, and then we'll start working out how I get the guards off to get the fuel line through. The carbs right in under here. It looks like the fuel line goes in to the other side of the bowl under the carb there, but I've got to try and figure out how to get the trigger and the whole side assembly off to get to that fuel line. Okay, so far I think I'm heading on the right track. I've just got one end of this, doesn't look so pretty because it's a bit ground and sanded, but I've got one end of this air filter just sort of trimmed down so it'll slide in into the hole and go in where it's supposed to. What I've encountered is 2 screws that go up through here. I guess you could call this, I don't know what, from the air filter into the carb. This little inlet pipe has 2 screws that run up into that housing, and the filter's banging into them. So I'm going to pop them out. I've got to take this out anyway because I want to take the carb off and give it a good clean. Pop that back out of there. See, I can easily get a screwdriver and loosen both of those, and they'll come out. The next little mission that I've got, however, is the 2 that run into the inlet of the carb itself, and I'm not really sure which way is on or off for this choke either, so I've got to take it apart just to have a look and see what that butterfly does. And then it's getting in even deeper to the inlet port and undoing the screws or the bolts with the carburetor straight into that inlet. Hopefully if I can do that from this side, I won't have to take any of the trigger assembly or this grip off, because as I said, it's sparking. I don't want to have to take apart any more than I have to just to get it to run, because then I could bugger up or mess up anything that is actually okay in there that doesn't need to be disturbed. So yeah, let's keep on going. Off camera I've managed to get this guard out of the way to access the carb and the fuel line. So as you can see down here, I'm just going to pull this off now. It's just breaking away and cracked, and it's just, yeah, look at that, split all the way up. So that wouldn't be holding fuel, unfortunately, so we'll replace that. What I did find interesting inside this, the trigger mechanism, so the little linkage here that runs over this brass roller, I guess, on the end of the carb butterfly. When you pull the trigger on the chainsaw, it allows it to go forward, so it's spring loaded into full throttle, so when the trigger is released, it's actually holding it at idle, and then when you pull the trigger, it allows the throttle to open. That's kind of cool. Unfortunately, there is a piece of the casing broken, the 2 bolts up underneath. That's just, yeah, I'll have to see if I can't get that welded or somehow secured back onto here to hold that. Otherwise it's just relying on the one main bolt up through here that holds the that whole trigger assembly on. So keep going, let you know how we get on soon. So yes, that was a bit simpler than I thought. I just broke away the rest of the remaining plastic from the outer of that fuel line. I decided the big fuel line was just a bit too fat to try and expect it to squeeze through the small gap. Quite a thick wall on that stuff. So I have some clear PVC, and I've just threaded the spring from the inside back inside that, and we'll put this trigger and stuff back on, and then I guess I can, in theory, throw some fuel in it and try and start it. I know I haven't cleaned out the carb yet, like I said I was going to, but I mean, if it had been running, there's nothing serious that's happened to it otherwise. Should be able to try and at least see if I can get a spark out of it, get a cough and a sputter, and take it from there. Why not? Let's give it a go. Well, I guess let's see what it does. I've just mixed up a small 500ml. It's a half a litre. Gone quite generous with the mix. Yeah, a little bit over 40 to 1 I guess, so a bit extra oil rather than a bit less is probably better for it. So I'm just going to tip this in. Might find a funnel. Yeah, not a big funnel, but that'll do. So see if it stays in there. Hopefully it's not just going to run straight out the bottom. Can't see a puddle on the ground underneath yet. Thought I might have been able to see fuel in that fuel line now that it was a clear tube with the spring in it, but nothing there, so yeah, just start cranking it. I couldn't see a tap or anything like that. Got the on off switch there. I knew I had spark when it was in the on position before, but the spark plug, oh, I better tighten it I suppose. Got the spark plug back in, give that a quick tighten down. Tweak. This is still with the original spark plug. We'll see what happens. If I need to change it to the other one, I will. It's the first time this has had fuel in it since I've had it, and I'm not sure which way that lever is supposed to be for choke or not. I have no idea. And there's a throttle lock as well, but I'm just going to try and pull it and see if I can't get a cough. And on. Yeah. Never mind, we'll keep playing. I might take that carb apart, find out which way around the choke actually goes, and then we'll see what happens when we come back to have another try. So it's turned out to be a bit of a stubborn brute, this old saw. Spent a fair bit of time. I was down here last night. Had the carburetor completely apart, cleaned everything out of that, played around a bit more with the fuel and the fuel line, took the filter out of the tank, cleaned that. Yeah, as I said, had the whole carb apart, cleaned it all out, blew it all out. Definitely still sparking, but just had the plug out and there's not even a smell or a sense of fuel coming through into the cylinder. So what I'm going to do is a bit more of a deep dive, I guess, and start stripping it right back. I'll take the carb back off and have another look at that reed, and just see if I can't figure out what's going on. There are little diaphragms and little reeds that pump inside the carb itself. Got all them pretty clean, blew everything out. Yeah, just process of elimination, I guess. So I'll just keep working away at it and let you know how things go. So got well and truly carried away with this so far as taking it apart, finding out what the problem was. Seemed a little bit odd, you know, being able to pull it over and crank it over so easy before. Like, even for a two-stroke, like, the compression seemed a bit weak and a bit strange. So as you can see, she's completely in bits. Here's the top cylinder. These are the piston rings off the piston. When we took it apart, I mean, they're pretty squishy, and put the piston rings inside the bore. I'm not sure how well we're going to be able to focus on that. Don't know if you can see the ring gap in there, how big that gap is. probably a fairly large contributing factor to why there wasn't a lot of compression and why this thing might not have been running. So I sourced new piston rings. This is the second set of new piston rings that I had turn up. The first set I ordered, I asked for piston rings to suit a 2-inch bore, and I got sent 50mm. 50mm piston rings were 0.8 of a millimeter out, so when I tried them in the bore I had exactly the same ring gap. Next set that I got, these came with the next size up that I had available, and they were 52, so they were too big. So I just spent the last little while grinding them down. I have a proper piston ring filer grinder, and I've now got these ground down and gapped to what I should have is what were we, 6/1000ths of an inch per inch of diameter in bore. Because I've got a 2-inch diameter bore, I need 12/1000ths of an inch ring gap, which is 0.3 of a millimeter. So with grinding these, and I've just put a little back handle bevel to get them around the dowel on the piston. Let's see if we can't see that there's a heck of a lot less gap in that piston ring there. So I'm going to put these rings on the piston, put all of this back together, cut new gaskets because I destroyed the gasket taking the cylinder off. So to make that right, I've got a double layer of new gasket cut, and I'll put a little bit of silicon gasket between those to make that into one gasket the same thickness as what the previous one was. Get it all back together. You can see everything's a lot cleaner now. I've been scrubbing and degreasing and getting rid of all the build-up of dirt and residue and sawdust off these. The little plate there's come up quite neat. I also got the air filter finished, so the new air filter is in there. I think I showed you that one. I modified it, had to cut it and re-silicon one of the ends back on. I've got it screwed back in with the cover back on, but fits in really well into there, so that should make a good job. Had the carb apart for a second time and given that an even more thorough clean out since I had time while I was waiting for the piston rings to turn up. The bar, actually I'll show you the chain bar. I've got that down here, so if I just lift the camera, these are the two bars. So this is obviously the clean one, is the one that was on the saw. I've taken that off and given it a good clean up, and the one above is the longer extra bar that came with it. In the plastic bag I've got the chain that I took off. That's all had a good soak in petrol and got rid of some of the residue and the tar and the, what do you call it, the tree sap off the chain. You can see how much cleaner that is. And the other chain is a spare chain that's a bit rusty there, so I'll give those the same treatment, get the other two, you know, the bar and the other chain cleaned up as a spare. But I just wanted to show you this little bit in between before I put it all back together. It's been a lot easier to do things off camera instead of waffling and talking while I'm doing it. So yeah, I'll get all of this put back together and then we'll be able to try and give it a pull and see how it goes. I've got a couple of little screws that I've got to try and source off the pull starter, my container in here. I only had 2 out of about, well, it looks like 6 screws that should have been holding that whole side cover and pull start assembly on, so I'll go and find some more of those screws somewhere, and then we'll get it all back together and try starting it up soon. Hopefully probably Saturday, a couple of days away. Not that that matters for the video because we'll edit it all in together, and it's only Thursday night now, so I've got another day at work tomorrow, and then I'll be playing with this on Saturday and hopefully get it going then. Righto, we'll pause you guys again and we'll see you again soon. Well, I don't know if you can see in the background out here, but we've got a terrible, miserable, horrible rainy day. Got all of this thing back together though. Took a little bit of work. Used a 50mm hose clamp as a piston ring compressor to clamp the rings down tight and get the barrel slid back over the top of the piston. Yeah, it's all come back together nice and clean and tidy. Got the little extra bolts and screws that I needed for the pull start cover. Trying to pull this thing out. The compression is way up on what it was before, so that's a good thing. Yeah, it's all back together. The only thing I haven't got to put back on this is the handle. When I took the handle off from over the top, as you can see, the bar from underneath is snapped. So being this aluminium, I've got a buddy at work that hopefully can try and weld this up. It is hollow tube, so even if we have to put some kind of an aluminium dowel through there to weld and give it some guts, I'll get all of this cleaned up and run this around and see if I can't get him to do a little job on that. Did find one for sale online, second-hand handle to replace this, but all the way from America, it's going to cost me about 120 bucks New Zealand dollars, 120 to get that bought and posted over. So if I can't just get this fixed up and made functional, I might have to spend some money, but I'm going to try and avoid that. So yeah, I guess the next thing I've got to try and do now is just chuck some fuel in and see if I can't get it to start. Without the handle, it's going to be a little bit tricky. Have to try and balance it on the floor somehow, use my foot through the handle here to hold it. I'm not going to put the chain and the bar back on just yet until I get it running. It's probably a bit safer to just get the motor running by itself, and then we'll put the chain and bar on once I know it's going to run. So yeah, I guess we'll so the next step, really, next logical thing, chuck some gas back in it and have a go at starting it. I'm not entirely sure of starting procedure. I don't have other chainsaws, even modern ones of my own, so I don't know. Just have to play with it and see what works and what doesn't, and work the choke back and forwards and the throttle and just see if I can't get it to cough and sputter and come to life. So yeah, down on the floor we go and we'll give it a shot. Oh, you can see that compression's way up on how easy it was for me to pull it over last time. Yeah, there's definitely fuel up in that bore. It's just not firing off. So maybe I'll pop the spark plug and just double check everything in there. Get back to you soon. I just made the repair to the handlebar. I forgot to film before I put this thing together, but I've got some epoxy resin sitting in there at the moment. What I decided when I took this to work, talked to a couple of the guys there, and a mate of mine who's done a bit of welding and stuff, thought this aluminium would be quite hard to weld just with so much oil and impregnation and contamination around it, and it's already had a weld repair before. So what I decided, I stopped in at the hardware store and bought a great big bolt. This is the head that I cut off the bolt, and I've cut it down. It sort of comes up to about in here somewhere. Cut the head off, and it's actually a dowel going through the inside now, with heaps of epoxy resin all around it, filling that gap and that void around the threaded section. So hopefully with it biting into the threads and giving it a good clean and degrease as much as I can. Just hoping that with that through there is like a steel dowel, will hold this handle once it's bolted back onto the machine. If all else fails, I do have this plastic joiner. It's only clear vinyl, but I was planning on sliding that over the top as well, and possibly like a heat shrink just to hold it and protect it a bit more. Machine's not going to get a lot of use. Like this chainsaw, it'll be started up and run and put on display and stuff. I'm not planning on using it for cutting wood and doing stuff, but I just need to prove that it works again. So yeah, if I need to, I can slide this over the top and glue that on as well. Otherwise I was going to put this over and use it as the shim or the little shock absorber where it bolts into the bottom of the machine. It had a piece of rubber inner tube wrapped around there to make that, but yeah, I'll probably use this in the place of what was there. See how it goes once the glue dries. So I'd show you that. Waiting on the carburetor kit to turn up. Had good fuel transfer and everything working in the saw itself, so I just decided to order the diaphragm kit for the carb because it looked like it was just flooding. When I pulled it over, clamped off the fuel line and got the fuel mix down properly, it decided to do a little bit of a cough and a little bit of a burble, so I knew that it's probably going to run. It's just over fueling, and hopefully with the new diaphragm kit and the carburetor she'll be away. So yeah, I've got a message this morning. The courier's got that with him for delivery in the next hour or so. So see how we go when that turns up. Since I'm waiting on that carburetor kit and the diaphragm to turn up, waiting for that glue to dry as well, I thought I'd show you what I've got going on here. So fuel line at the moment is just clamped closed to stop it flooding and stop everything running down into the carb. But what I'm going to do is unclamp that and actually let some fuel down through there. Give that a squeeze the other way, open it up a bit. Shouldn't have really left that clamped off completely, to be honest. But that'll let some fuel down into there. I'm going to choke it and pull it. It'll probably flood, and then when I clamp that off again and keep pulling it, it should get a little bit of a burble once it gets rid of some of that flooding. So ignition's turned on, give it the choke, lock the throttle. I'll give it a few pulls. It probably won't burble, it'll just flood and start spitting fuel out the exhaust again. That compression is way back up now. I should in theory have that fuel down into there. I'm just checking the carburetor and the exhaust. I just want to see if I've got it to flood. I can smell the fuel, and it's definitely it's wet in the carb and dribbling out of there, so I know I've got plenty of fuel down there. So if I clamp it off and then keep pulling it, I will get a little burble out of it. I know I will. It's exactly what I had happen the other day after I turned the camera off. So just got to get rid of some of that fuel, evaporate a little bit of it out, tip it around and tip out some of the extra raw fuel that was in there. So here we go, she's going to go very, very soon. That's just used up the fuel that was in the carb. So once I get that carb sorted, new diaphragm kit in there to control the fuel and the metering, we'll have a running saw. But 2-strokes, no. I'm not used to that. Everything else I've got is 4-stroke. This is the first 2-stroke project I've ever worked on, so done a lot of learning in here. And righto, let's just take this carb off and get ready for the kit to arrive so we can get this thing going properly. So I've got my little package is just turned up, delivered by courier with the new diaphragm and gasket set for this carburetor. Carb's off the chainsaw, and I've taken the screws out of the bottom already. I just disconnected and left that on the chainsaw, the bottom of the fuel line from the tank. Sort of sit this back together and show you the order it comes apart in case anyone else is doing this and wants a little bit of a look at it. So there's a gasket and a small fuel filter screen in the very bottom there. I'm not going to worry about taking them out. They're good and clean, and I've had them in and out plenty of times. Next layer down is I guess this is like a little reed gasket, diaphragm type deal. Then we've got another gasket. Then there's a mid plate in the carb that forms the, I guess, part of the fuel pump and the metering. Then we've got the little diaphragm itself, little fuel pump, and then another gasket. So in here, this gives the access to the little needle and seat which is underneath. I've had these apart and I've had all of this off and replaced the gasket through here. gasket through there got replaced. When I had that out, I took this out. There's a bar with a screw through there that pivots that on. I've also checked that the little plunger on the top of there is sitting flat in the carb. What I think my problem might be is on this diaphragm. I don't know how well that's going to focus, but the little button on the top of there is quite worn, so I don't know if that's anything to do with what's causing my problems. But anyway, here's this new packet, and get some scissors and we'll slice it open and compare, see if there's major differences. Yeah, genuine Tillotsen. Yeah, cool. If anyone's interested, this is an, where is it? HL46B, an HL46B carb, and the repair kit with these gaskets in it is a DG5HL. You can see that label there, DG5HL. Nicely packaged, bit of cardboard and everything. Let's see what we've got. So the gasket, so straight away I can see that this piece here, when I compare it to this one, isn't bubbled and twisted and warped. This is you know, a bit twisted, so hopefully that new one of those will be awesome. The gasket looks the same. Extra little notch out of there, but all the holes are the same, so I don't worry too much about that. This gasket here is different. Where's the other one? The other one's back down under here. So these pieces, this all lines up, but this piece and this piece, I don't think it's going to matter where they go onto the plate. They're actually open, so I don't know what's going to happen there, but the diaphragm piece seals over the top of that anyway, so that should be okay. And the little diaphragm itself walls us, so this is way different. So this is quite thick and brittle and ugly, and this just feels super cottony and yeah, really fresh. So yeah, this is going to be interesting to see how much of a difference it makes. It's clearly way better. Like this is like real hard and brittle, and this is just like a feather. So we'll chuck it all together, make sure I don't get the old ones mixed up with the new ones. What have I done? Probably already have. We'll figure it out and we'll get it all put together and see what happens. Yeehaw. Oh, let's give her another try. Apart from putting the handle back on, that carb's back together, back under there, got everything back on. I've actually put the connection on between the air filter and the carb now. Hope it works. Vice grip is no longer pinching that fuel line, and I can't see anything leaking out everywhere under there just at the minute. So, on, choke on, throttle locked. It will take a little bit to pulse and get some fuel down into the bottom of that carb, I'm guessing. Yeah, hey. So let's go choke off, we'll leave the throttle locked. So that was a bit of a success and a failure at the same time. Unfortunately, I just got this thing started up and the camera battery went flat, so that's why the little video of it running there cut off. But ran it for a few minutes, ran well. got to adjust the carb and just get the speeds right and the idle right and everything like that. So I've got it back up on the bench. Next things I've got to do is put the handle back on it. So that glue up job worked really well. Handle's nice and solid. It's going to stick together and do the job using the little plastic tube that I got there as a spacer for underneath. And then I just put the bar back on and the chain. One thing I've done was filled up the oil for the gearbox. So the sight glass on there, I've got it to the arrow line. I did this after work a couple of hours ago, but I just come back down now to check it out. Things are dark, so I can't start this and run it, but I've got a puddle of oil on the bench. This is definitely the gearbox oil. It's come out, so I'm exploring and trying to find out where it's coming from. At the moment, around this side seems okay. There's like maybe a little bit of a weep from here, but most of the drips are right underneath it, so I'm going to lift the saw up and have a look right underneath and see if I can't find out where it's coming from. Set the camera there for a second and just try and have a look. I don't know if you guys will see much, but there's a lot of oil dripping from under here, so I don't know if there's a crack in this case. Possibly there's a crack under here, but there's a lot of oil just under here where my finger is. I don't know if that's a crack. It certainly feels like there's a crack in the bottom there, so that could be unfortunate. I'll just have to maybe put some JB Weld, try and seal that. The inside there was a lot of oil. Under here, I don't know if you can see along this plate, there's a lot of oil sitting on there, so yeah, unfortunately it does feel like there's a crack right through that base plate there, which is the bottom of that gearbox sump. So I decided to give this a bit of a closer inspection. I drained the oil out into a little jar here and just tip this up on its nose, and I've just been working away at this, and you can probably see the crack through the bottom here. I pried it open with a screwdriver and just got a razor blade in there. It's just holding the crack open very, very slightly so that I can force some JB Weld resin into here. This is going to be the hardest part to try and get to seal up, just around the bottom. That's where the major part of the leak has been. So yeah, I'm glad I found that. I was a little bit curious as to why that gearbox was completely dry, so yeah, I'll force some resin into there and then pull that blade back out. If I've got it open very, very slightly, I can work as much into that little crack in that crevice as I can, and then release, pull that razor blade out that's holding it open, and it'll squish in and get a good bond. I am quite worried about that right there. So from the other side it's not too bad, but there was a lot of oil sitting down on that plate, so I don't know how that's managed to weep its way through. But anyways, we'll seal this up and leave it to dry overnight, and I guess I won't be putting any more back together today. So yeah. Well, here we go again, eh? Moment of truth. First proper full cold start. So I solved that oil leak problem under there. I filled this up with oil a couple of hours ago. Let that epoxy JB Weld soak in and dry and yes, settle and go solid overnight. Filled her up with oil to the mark, left it sitting for a couple of hours, and good as gold. So I've got the bar and the chain back on. I may have to adjust this. I know that after I've run it, this is probably going to stretch, so I have got it quite tight at the moment. We'll just see what happens. Still got fuel in it, so it's pretty much, it's dead cold. I haven't even pulled this thing over since I've put it back together. Put the handle back on, so I've got ignition on, throttle lock, choke on, camera battery is charged and recording. So let's give it a couple of pulls and it should burble, and then we can choke off and get it to start. Well, hey, look at that first pull and we get that burble out of it. So choke is all the way off. We'll leave the throttle locked. Okay, interesting. One pull, and I just tried to tried to give it some revs and it locked up, so that tells me the chain is probably too tight and it is bound up on the clutch and stalled. So as crazy as it is, I was looking at this chain and the way it drove, and yeah, I actually just had the chain on the wrong way around. So I put it back on. It is a little bit loose. We'll firm it up again soon. But yeah, I was looking at the way these teeth are and the way they ran onto the gear that drives, and yeah, I just had the chain on completely the wrong way around. So we'll give it another start, see what happens. I'm just going to leave the choke off and just see what happens when I just try and pull it. Why did it die? Why did it die? Try again. Well, that's enough of that. Yeah, you guys are in a whole cloud of smoke. You want to see the rest of the shed. Can't see a lot in here. Next to an open door, so got the other doors open. We'll open everything up, let the smoke clear. But yeah, it's really cool that it goes, it runs. I'll just keep playing with the carb. I'm just going to tighten this chain up a little bit. As you can see, we've got a little bit of slack and slop in there, but I was pumping the chain lube, manual thumb pump on there. Probably saw me doing that. A little bit of oil leak down there, but that doesn't matter. Oil stops rust, I guess. So as long as I've got those major oil leaks and I'm not going to lose all my gearbox oil again, I'm happy as. Sweet. I'm going to open these doors, the other place out, and might call this video done, unless I decide I'm going to add a little bit more into it tomorrow. Yeah, I'd love to get Nev's reaction and Nev's dad's reaction to this. So, and I'll get it out in the sunlight, might look a bit better, take some photos for you too. So, cool, thanks for watching.